All right. So your first step is going to be researching local and state ordinances. In the ordinances, they're often referred to by several things, billboards, such as billboards, off-premises signs. This is what I've usually seen in Texas, outdoor advertising signs, or commercial signs. You want to get a really, really good idea of all of these rules and regulations, all of these ordinances, because they usually include the following restrictions, which are very important. The distance to other billboards. I've seen anywhere from 600 feet to 1,500 feet that you have to be from other billboards in order to get a permit, and a distance to commercial activity. Once again, this totally ranges from state to state. Could be 600 feet to commercial activity or 1,000. It also depends on if you're in a city or if you're in the county, which jurisdiction is over the property that you want to put your billboard on. So step two is going to be finding about 10 to 15 properties that fit the requirements of step one. Once you get a really, really good idea of the distance that you have to be, the sizes that you can build, where you can build, the zonings that you can build if you're in the county or city. You're going to look up the county slash city that you're going to want to build in, followed by GIS. This is going to get the Geographic Information Systems. This is just a map that contains tax records and parcel boundaries that allows you to pull up who owns what properties. So you want to find 10 to 15 properties that fit the criteria, and you want to mark down the parcel ID number or PPIN, the owner name, owner address, and parcel address. And you also want to make sure that it's actually worth it to build a sign at that property. So usually you want to make sure the property has a good traffic count. You can look this up by searching your state followed by traffic count map. You want to make sure it's usually around over 10,000, but there's so many other factors. I'm going to make another video on this. Things like the speed limit or whether or not there's a stoplight. If somebody has to stop at a stoplight or a stop sign, I mean, that's preferable. It's a longer time that they're going to see your sign. But once again, I'll make another video about that. So after you've done that, you're going to want to create a letter, and you can message me for a letter template. But you're going to want to fill in that information that you got in step two. So owner name, property address, and the owner's address. And you're going to print and mail that to the owner addresses. The goal is to get a low flat rate, right? The lower the rate you get, the more money you're going to get. However, typically I like to do a low flat rate and a split of 18 to 20% of revenue from the sign, whichever is higher. So this kind of protects the landowner from inflation and keeps them happy, which I think is good business. Three-legged stool, three parties being happy, you, the landowner, and the advertiser. Um, but at the end of the day, it really all depends. If it's not going to be an extremely profitable sign for you, and there's a lot of money that goes into building the sign, you're going to want to do a lower revenue share or just a flat rate. It entirely depends on the situation, once again. And after you've reached an agreement, you're going to want to get the land lease signed. Also, I have a land lease template. You can message me for that. But once again, you should always consult an attorney because this stuff, real estate law, varies very much state to state. Step four is applying for the permit. So in order to apply for a permit, you need to have a lease. The state or the city that you're going to request a permit from is going to ask for the lease. They're also going to want a copy of the property owner's deed. You can usually get this at a courthouse, at the county recorder's office. They're going to want design drawings for the sign and possibly, depending on the state, proof of insurance slash bonding. So where to get the permit? Most permits are through whatever the smallest jurisdiction that applies to the parcel. So if you're in a city, you're going to want to contact the city. If you're in the county, you're going to want to contact the county. However, chances are, in my experience, most counties do not care at all, but it's going to default back to the state. So you're going to want to contact the state, in which case they'll have some guidelines and you'll have to apply for permitting through them. Going on to step five, you probably earlier than this, you're going to have to decide what type of sign you're going to build. So there's pretty much four options. Wooden, which I would recommend for anybody starting out because it is so cheap. You can build that for around $5,000 to $10,000. A little ugly, but it really doesn't matter that much. Very high ROI because it is cheap, and if you get it on a right area, you can still make a lot of money renting it out. But it doesn't last very long. I mean, some of them I have seen last 30 to 40 years, but it's rare, and usually there's repairs involved in that. An I-frame, this is a metal I-frame sign, is going to be a lot more expensive, typically $15,000, $20,000. Lasts a lot longer, and there is a good ROI. But once again, you can't go super high with these, and there are other drawbacks as well. Monopole is what you typically see. That's the one that you think of when you think of billboards. And these things last super long. You can build them super high up in the air for, I mean, really height doesn't add much more cost for monopoles other than crane rentals. But they're the most expensive statics, and they can range anywhere from, I mean, I think you can get them low. It entirely depends on which state you're in, who you're using to fabricate, but I would say typically $50,000 to $90,000. They look very professional, and they also have a very good resale rate. So the multiple on the revenue when you go to sell it to a big company is going to be higher than an iframe or a wooden sign. And lastly, this is kind of where the whole industry is headed, but a digital monopole. So these are extremely expensive, really anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000. Totally depends on the size that you're doing as far as the face, if you're going to do digital on both sides or digital on one side and static on the other. But also resells for the highest, and there's a lot of cool things you can do digitally with like retargeting people with Facebook ads. So if they drive past it and they see an ad, they get hit with a Facebook ad later on in the day. But typically you have 6 to 8 slots, so you have to find a lot more advertisers that want to be on that sign than you would on a monopole. But once again, no labor is involved in changing the messages. Finally, step six, I'm going to make another video on this, but feel free to shoot me an email or follow me on TikTok. It's Zach the Billboard Guy, where I talk about this stuff a lot. But you're going to want to get a rent/lease agreement between you and anybody interested in advertising. This is important in case they want to rent the sign for a year and they only pay for 3 months. You're going to want a written agreement before things get messy. The best advice for renting a sign is it's an advertising sign, right? It should be able to advertise itself. You're going to want to get a rent me vinyl, or if it's a digital, put up a message that says rent me, your phone number, your email address, website, whatever. And then also, if you're starting this business, like any other business, you're going to need a way to take money. So that's going to be invoicing software. Starting out, I would recommend QuickBooks. And then step seven is just going to be installing the message. So that's going to be reaching out to a vinyl printer. You can message me for any recommendations. There's a really, really good one out of North Carolina that I would recommend for any static vinyls. There's some good graphic designers that I work with on a freelance basis that I can also recommend. Or for digitals, usually the company that manufactures the digital is going to provide you a content management system. So I actually didn't make a slide on this because I just really didn't have the time. But yeah, if there's any other questions, feel free to message me. I would say I'm the most active on TikTok. Yeah, and good luck.